Welcome to How China Works. My name is Brendan Davis, and my co-host Yingying Li will be with us in just a few minutes with this week's interview. This is one that Yingying did with the guest, and I was not able to join for the call. And I'm especially sad about that because our guest this week is Mr. Bill Reichardt. Bill is a bit of a legend in investing and in Silicon Valley. And it's ironic because what with travel for my day job of film producing, I was flying into Palo Alto at about the time that the call was happening between Yingying and Bill. So the timing just didn't work out for me to join. But this is a pretty fantastic conversation. I'm going to say a few things about Mr. Reichardt. He is co-founder and managing director of Garage Technology Ventures. They're a seed and early stage capital VC firm based in Silicon Valley. He's a partner at Pegasus Tech Ventures, and they are a global firm. And his background is extraordinarily extensive. He has worked throughout his career at places such as McKinsey & Company, the World Bank, Brown Brothers Harriman. He is also a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, former chairman of the Churchill Club in Silicon Valley, and much, much more. Please enjoy this conversation. We're going to endeavor to bring you new episodes as often as we can, while not just China, but now the whole world is dealing with the effects of COVID-19. So stay safe, stay sane, and please enjoy this conversation with Bill Reichardt.
Welcome, Bill. Thank you for being here on our show. So, could you take 30 seconds to introduce who you are and what exactly are you busy for recently for our audience to know a little bit more about you?
Well, thank you so much, Yingying. I'm so delighted and honored to be part of this. And I'm a little bit pressed to imagine squeezing my entire life story into 30 seconds, but I'll try. I am right now I am managing director of Garage Technology Ventures, which is a seed and early stage venture firm here in Silicon Valley. And I am also a partner in a global venture capital firm called Pegasus Tech Ventures, which is a $1.5 billion venture firm that invests all over the planet. And I am also writing a book called The Art of the Pitch. And I am also delightfully going all over the world and helping entrepreneurs in workshops for different countries all over the planet. And in addition to that, I'm also the chief evangelist of the Startup World Cup, which is part of this global initiative to bring entrepreneur ecosystems and venture ecosystems together across 50 regions around the world to run the biggest global competition on the planet for startup companies, which has a $1 million grand prize at the end of the whole competition. So I'm a busy boy these days.
Brilliant start. You're one of the most extraordinary VCs, mentors, and startup coaches in Silicon Valley and the rest of the world. So we can't wait to have you talk about innovation, leadership lessons, and especially under this uncertain time like global coronavirus 19, right? So could you please share with us your most recent story and engagement with China or the Chinese market? Let's say if there's any activities regarding helping Chinese entrepreneurs in dealing with this global shift in either fundraising or reacting to the next stage of, startups.
Yes, well, I have to say that, for the past many years, I have just been a huge enthusiast about bridging between Silicon Valley and China. And I've done what I can to try to continue that bridge and continue it through my partnership with the Pegasus Tech Ventures people in the Startup World Cup initiative. But unfortunately, I gotta say, it's been so distressing to me that it feels as though we are growing apart. And it's really upsetting. There's still, some continuing ongoing connection. I was just in Shenzhen several months ago now. I guess it was the middle of last year when I was in Shenzhen. The energy and the dynamism of the entrepreneur community in China just is so exciting to me. But our ability to connect has just been getting tougher and tougher thanks to a whole bunch of somewhat crappy geopolitical things that have been going on. And so, I'm hoping that we'll kind of get past that in the not too distant future. Hint, hint. But we'll see. We'll see how this all evolves in the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's very important to pay attention to, of course, the global trends on technology advancement, but also very important to pay attention and to focus on the essence of entrepreneurship and innovation. You talk a lot about this leadership and in entrepreneurship, and I personally am a fan of your blogs and your activities, and I follow a lot. Being in Silicon Valley, like myself, we know that the culture of startups and the culture of VC there spread around the world could be made into lessons to learn, as well as a great comparison with other cultures and markets. So you have a lot of advice on coaching entrepreneurs and VCs around the world, and based on your experience, I'm sure. Do you have some specific insights, cross-cultural, let's say, when you are coaching Chinese entrepreneurs these days, right? We are mentioning about the context is where both U.S. and Chinese market are actually having issues to solve, right? When it comes to remarriage each other. What would be the learning and experience like, say, mentally and mindset and tips for those people you coach cross-culturally at this point?
Sure. A lot to talk about, but let's talk about leadership for a second. The topic of leadership is a topic that is probably talked about more than any other topic in sort of business broadly defined, and even in entrepreneurship specifically. And it is talked about so much, and yet it is understood so little. I believe that all of us generally, but I think in particular, I see this in Chinese entrepreneurs, we have this conception of leadership in a sort of very stereotypical sense of the leader is the person sort of at the top, and a leader is someone who has a bunch of followers. And so it is the leader's responsibility to tell the followers what to do. And I see this in entrepreneurs, all over the world, what I consider to be a false understanding of what leadership is. In reality, when I look at the most successful companies, even those successful companies that have very strong founders, the definition of leadership is actually very different from this sort of stereotype we have. In fact, in order to build a successful company, you have got to hire people who are themselves leaders. And this is not typically understood by a lot of entrepreneurs, because a lot of entrepreneurs have a certain sort of ego involvement around the company belonging to them, being their company, and wanting to control the evolution of the company. And so a lot of entrepreneurs are afraid to hire strong people, or they create a culture where strong people do not thrive because they try to create this sort of command and control sort of stereotypical leadership model. Instead, what I see as being sort of the most successful model, one of my major learnings from my years of experience in Silicon Valley, looking at high-performing teams, the best founders recruit people who have leadership skills, because they know that in order to scale rapidly, you have to push decision-making out to the edge. You have to push leadership out to the edge. You have to give your people the ability and the authority to make decisions and even make mistakes. And you have to find people who have the strength of character and the strength of ego to say, okay, actually, this is something I should bring back and we should talk about, or this is something I can make a decision here, and even if I'm wrong, it's not that big a deal. That's the kind of people you want to hire. You do not want to hire robots who will simply follow whatever programming you give them, because that will not work in a dynamic startup company where things are changing all the time. And you cannot program your people to know how to react in every circumstance. So that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years about leadership and sort of the difference between our common understanding of leadership and what in fact is necessary and successful in a startup company.
Do you have any observation or a good example that is related to some ecosystem in China or more broadly Asia entrepreneurial ecosystem at this point to embrace that that kind of culture?
Well, okay, so I will, I've spent a fair amount of time in Asia, in Japan and in Korea and in China and Taiwan and Hong Kong and in Southeast Asia and Singapore and Indonesia and Malaysia and Thailand. So I've sort of seen this span of ecosystems in terms of the way people behave. And, I think the reality is that the degree to which entrepreneurs in Asia differ is not as great as the differences in Silicon Valley between entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the relatively few people who have the gumption to become entrepreneurs in any Asian society it's small enough that those people are almost by definition, 2 or 3 sigmas out on the curve, right? So it's a pretty unique mindset and personality that's willing to take that leap. Silicon Valley has a disproportionate percentage of people like that because Silicon Valley is a place where people like that migrate. As you know, almost nobody in Silicon Valley is originally from Silicon Valley, right? Almost everybody in Silicon Valley came to Silicon Valley to be part of this very unique entrepreneurial culture. In other parts of the world, entrepreneurs are growing up and evolving sort of alongside the traditional culture. And so they have this challenge that they need to overcome the traditional culture to, sort of stand out enough that they can attract like-minded people out of that culture, convince them to move away from sort of the traditional standards of success and take a risk with their careers, with their lives, and join an entrepreneurial startup. But my general experience in most Asian cultures is they are being held back by the local traditional culture that says, the most successful people, don't drop out of school and start up some wacky startup. The most successful people follow a traditional path of getting their degree, getting their advanced degree, working for the government, working for a brand name, being a professional, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of great talent around the world, I think, and, in Asia in particular, is held back from joining this innovation ecosystem by the traditional culture that says, do what is expected of you. And, don't break the mold. Don't disappoint your parents by doing something crazy like being an entrepreneur. So I think it is something that is gradually evolving in most cultures. Certainly in China, there has been an extraordinary push, in every direction to provide, to make it appropriate, to make it acceptable to be an entrepreneur. It's still a problem in some of the other Asian cultures, though. In Japan and Korea and Singapore and even Hong Kong, it's still a problem. So I got into a certain amount of trouble a few years ago, actually several years ago now. It was 2014. I was on a podcast actually, and one of the topics was AI. Back then, AI was sort of just emerging, and I said, as someone who's actually been around as an entrepreneur and as an investor for a while, I said, look, guys, AI is not an investable thesis. What does that mean, Bill? And everybody looked at me like I was insane because everybody said, no, 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 AI is the next big thing. But the reality is AI is just a tool the way, the internet is a tool and Python is a tool and multimedia is a tool and, Wi-Fi is a tool. AI is just a tool to enable you to do some things in terms of application development and solutions that you couldn't do easily before. But AI is not magic. It is not some, sort of extraordinarily new elixir that has been delivered from the heavens to mankind that will transform all of humanity. It is just a tool. Now, it's a very high-powered tool, and it can do some things that sometimes seem like magic. But AI itself is not an investable thesis. AI enables you to create solutions that may or may not be good investments. So not everything that has AI attached to it is necessarily a good investment. So what you need to do around the whole space of AI is, one, understand the strengths and the limitations of AI, and two, be objective and realistic about whether or not the application of AI in any given particular field is creating tremendous value, has a compelling value proposition that is going to enable a business to grow rapidly and become highly successful. So, yes, AI is powerful and interesting and exciting, but it's only the application to solving problems or creating opportunities or enabling solutions that turns it into an investable opportunity. And so, for the most part now, the word AI has sort of just blended into the whole thesis of, sort of the next big thing. And the discussion around what's investable is more specifically about, what is the value proposition of this particular solution or application versus this one, all of which use AI. So, so that's what I encourage my fellow investors to focus on. Stop getting excited just because AI is somehow involved, and instead focus on whether or not there's a sustainable, compelling value proposition that's being created by the application of AI to this particular domain, for this particular opportunity, to solve this particular problem. The big problem is that too many entrepreneurs chase too few opportunities. And so, as soon as the idea of, a gig economy for something sort of pops up, there are just a boatload of gig economy for something companies. Or there's, bicycle sharing or scooter sharing or food delivery or, last mile delivery or, pick a topic. And, entrepreneurs, as soon as it becomes sort of a possibility, you have this just rush of entrepreneurs doing pretty much exactly the same thing.
And why is that happening?
Why? Because you whether you get it out of the zeitgeist or wherever you get it, you think, oh my gosh, they're doing this in Europe. I can do it here. And so you get a team together and you start up, and you don't realize that there are 30 other guys like you who have pulled together a team to do exactly the same thing in your region. And so everybody goes out for venture funding at the same time. And, we on the venture side go, oh my God, not another food delivery service, not another pet walking service, not another elder care service, not another X, not another Y, not another Z. I mean, it's just, oh
As
my
human
God.
beings, as entrepreneurs, that we tend to choose
Yes.
low-hanging fruit, and it's part of human nature to do
And
so. Right?
exactly. That's true. That's fine. I mean, there were I don't know what the number is, but there were scores of people back in the 1880s who were trying to figure out how to create a light bulb that would not burn out after an hour, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've studied this history or heard about this history, but there were literally scores of people who understood the concept of an incandescent bulb.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this mad race to find a filament material that would last long enough to be commercially viable. And it just so happened that Thomas Edison was so unbelievably driven that he just focused and focused and focused and focused, and he was the one who came up with the first long-lasting filament. But he did not invent the light bulb by any stretch of the imagination. Bunches and bunches of people, knew how to make a incandescent light bulb. They just couldn't make an incandescent light bulb that would last long enough to be commercially successful. And after, this is the classic quote, I did not fail 10,000 times. I just found 10,000 filaments that did not work, right? That was a variation on the quote. But it's always been true. It's always been true. When cars came out, there was an explosion in the number of car companies, right?
What is the key difference between what you just described hundreds of years ago, centuries ago, and now, right? And especially where this environment for entrepreneurs to build something in today's social media waves and in today's ever interconnected world with policies, politics shifting around. What would be the key difference that you think that make a difference?
Well, the big difference, I mean, a bunch of really important and really exciting big differences. One is that you've got people all over the planet trying to come up with these innovations in every single sector of our lives, right? So in the quote unquote in the olden days, right, in the 19th century, we were inventing phones and we invented light bulbs and we invented cars and we invented, so society invented these things, and there were a bunch of huge things that were invented, right? Now you've got entrepreneurs all over the planet coming up with novel ideas, every minute of every day. And so you have this Cambrian explosion of ideas around the world, and the opportunity for all of those entrepreneurs for, relatively cheaply to try them out.
Right.
It's unbelievably cheap to try out a new idea. You can hack something together over the weekend and float it out there on some social network or some other, mechanism for trying it out on Monday. And so you have this incredible richness of opportunity to come up with ways that are going to make the world a better place. So that's huge and that's wonderful, and pretty much every government on the planet is actively supporting that. And so you have this added sort of juice in terms of the government supporting it. And then the layer on top of it is you've got this venture capital community that is just dying to find a startup company that they can turn into a unicorn. So you've got all of this money chasing through all these nooks and crannies all over the planet, trying to find that next big unicorn. And, planting seeds here and there all over the place, hoping that this team has figured it out and has something novel that can be, in fact, highly successful. So, it's a wildly different world in terms of the opportunity for innovators to come up with things, test them, and get financing for them, all around the planet. So, that's pretty exciting. And then because of the evolution of these technologies in terms of the smartphone and wireless and the internet and connectivity, we now have the ability to innovate in pretty much every corner of our lives. Thomas Edison had some big areas that he could innovate in. He could innovate in the light bulb, and he could innovate in phonographs, and he could even integrate in electricity, and he can innovate in movies. But, okay, that's pretty exciting, right? But, there are, it's hard to think of a part of our lives that is not open to entrepreneurial innovation right now, right?
Yeah, exciting. At the same time, I heard a phrase most recently among my venture capitalist friend that is science fiction is a science fact or reality today. We are already entering or what we described as a science fiction life. No matter it's global climate change or like the lifestyle changed could be just by a single COVID-19, like our lifestyle changed. What do you see a role of tech at this point in playing, in shifting, in turning people's understanding and mentality about where we were going to have a science fiction life and now into this era right now globally we are feeling it, and what could possibly go wrong about tech? I'm not trying to be negative about the future, but
yes.
we know the power of technology, but at the same time, yes, right, we also depend on technology to live our life for better, right, to elevate our lives. But there's of course global concerns. Yeah, of course, in our way, the convenience of our life get tremendously boosted, and now there's another side. We think about, wow, our life could be completely in a science fiction mode when it comes to the fear for the concerns about the tech development. So what's your view on that?
Well, okay, two views on this. One is that the enthusiasts, the people who say, technology science fiction is now science fact, are full of baloney. I mean, we're not even close to what we can imagine in terms of the ability of technology, in today in practical terms. And, so there's this whole group of people out there who are, singularity enthusiasts, exponential enthusiasts, who say that, the pace of technology is accelerating and all that great stuff. And, smart people have said, we're going to, pardon?
That's what we hear from the news every day.
Right. No, I hear smart people say there's going to be more innovation in the next 10 years than we had in the last 100 years. And that is so full of bullpucky. It kind of pisses me off that smart people are saying stuff like that. It takes so much longer than we would like to believe for technology to actually have an impact. If you think about it. I mean, it's freaking 2020. It is the year 2020. In the year 2000, nobody would have imagined that artificial intelligence would be as limited as it is today. Mm-hmm. Nobody would imagine that Siri would be as bad as it is today. Nobody would imagine that you cannot get a decent transcription of most of your phone calls today. It's 2020. So it's crazy how poorly technology has performed over the last 20 years compared to what we expected. So, yes, technology is great, it's wonderful, and it's so much better now than it was 10 years ago, but it's nothing compared to what we thought the pace of technological change should have been. There's nothing science fiction-y out there. I mean, God bless Elon Musk. He is actually building rockets that can actually be recovered. It seems like an obvious thing, but he is on the front edge of engineering in space right now, and it's hard work. It is really hard work, and it's not all successful, but God bless. It's 2020, and he's actually getting some really interesting stuff done. But if you were a kid, as I was, watching Man on the Moon in 1969, so there I am. I'm a little kid watching Man step on the moon in 1969. You were not even born. But I'm watching Man on the Moon in 1969, and the year 2020 was unimaginably distant, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the year 2000 was unimaginably distant. It seemed obvious to me that when I grew up, I would have a chance to go to the moon. I mean, it seemed obvious to everyone in 1969 that by every kid assumed that they would have a chance to go to the moon. And right now, there are probably no kids who believe that it's likely they'll go to the moon. Isn't that weird? I mean, it's just weird.
Seems that we go backward. Seems that we go a little bit backward in understanding what future looks like.
Doesn't it? I mean, so the average plane flies slower today than it did when I was a kid. Is that insane, right? I mean, because, when I was a kid, the Concorde was introduced. And the Concorde doesn't fly anymore. So, so technology is not accelerating at an accelerating rate. That is not what's happening here. But so I don't mean to be negative about that. The good news is, the good news about this coronavirus and the impending recession is one, I think the craziness of venture capital valuations is going to end. We're not going to have all these insane overpriced unicorns. And entrepreneurs are not going to be able to get these insane valuations, based upon some promise that in 5 years they're going to have, real revenues. And I do think it's gonna cause a lot of entrepreneurs to think about, wow, is there something I can do that can really make a difference? Because we're gonna see some of the fragility in our global system, because of this coronavirus, because of the economic impact, because of the financial impact, because of the social and emotional impact that all of this is having around the planet. And I think we'll get away from another food delivery service, another kitchen robot, another personal, whatever it is, right? Mm. I think we'll get more people trying to solve harder problems. And I think we'll have more attention to things that really make a difference. So, we'll still have plenty of entrepreneurs who are inventing clever social apps to help millennials decide where to go drinking tonight, I guess. I don't know. But I think we will have, some serious innovation in some other parts of our economy, of our banking system, of our, leisure time and our family lives, because of this disruption that we're going through right now.
Yeah, I think maybe this kind of global crisis really can help people get back to more rationality, and it might be a moment for all of us to think about what is serious innovation. Like we talk about, in order to make innovation to happen, I think one of the key is talent. So for someone who interact or engage with global talent like yourself, what would you say to the people who really have, first of all, a vision And secondly, may they really want to build something during this particular moment and under this particular shift of, getting back to the normal way of entrepreneurship and to try to make things work.
Well, I think, the thing that I've learned both on the entrepreneur side and on the investment side is that this concept of talent is really, really hard to pin down, and because talent does not reside in the individual, talent resides in the team. And so the key to being successful is not just finding quote unquote talent, but it's finding appropriate teammates. Meaning you need to figure out, how to assemble the combination of talents with the right mindsets and the ability to be effective working together as a team. And that's something that we just do not train. We do not teach in our societies, in any of our societies. It still baffles me that, nothing in our societies really explicitly teaches us how to be good at teamwork. So our entire sort of structure of society, from childhood education through university education, through job competition, is so intensely focused on the individual and on individual performance. And, to this day, as much as we talk about teamwork in organizations, absolutely everybody is evaluated as an individual. I mean, we try to throw in, it works well as a teammate, blah, blah, blah. We talk about that crap, but nobody really does anything about it. Nobody spends any time teaching teamwork. So teamwork is the great good fortune of founders who get it. And, a lot of founders don't get it. A lot of founders come at innovation in a sort of command and control model of the one I was talking about before. But the best entrepreneurs, they understand that they're not going to be able to do this alone, that the secret is going to be to assemble a team that is a high-performing team. And, that's what, it's possible. I'm hoping maybe that sort of in this crisis that we're going through, it will cause more people to reflect more on the importance of teamwork in working through things. What you're going to see now, what you're going to see with this crisis is you're going to see the companies. There are going to be some companies that are going to hold together and some companies that are going to disintegrate. And the companies that hold together are the companies that have created a culture of teamwork where, when they see the downturn, when they see the crisis, they band together and they figure out a way to work through it together. The companies that are going to disintegrate are the ones that everybody is on board for the ride because they jumped on this particular bandwagon. It looked like it was going to be a rocket ship going to unicorn. People jumped on and said, hallelujah, this is going to be a unicorn. But when the going gets tough, the team is not there. It's just a whole bunch of individuals who jumped on a bandwagon. So we'll see. We'll see who spent the real time creating the culture that can hold a company together during this time of crisis. And those will be the companies that over the long term will create the most value. Because the companies figure out, how to hang together when the going gets tough. They're the ones who have a true culture of teamwork and creating value for their customers.
Thank you so much for taking time to share with us on how China works. So is there any way for our audience to be in touch with you? Because I find that we will probably need more and more speakers and thought leaders worldwide and cross-cultural bridge builders like you guys to be able to help when the time comes. So what will be the best way for people to stay in touch with you? And if you have one word for our audience?
You know, you can find me, well, I don't know, because you don't have Twitter in China, right? But you do have LinkedIn in China, right?
Yes, our audience are worldwide.
So, my Twitter handle is at Bill Reichert. So you can always find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. Actually on LinkedIn, I'm William M. Reichert. I don't know, because I was young and foolish when I started LinkedIn, but just my whole name. But my email is, that's really where because I really don't pay that much attention to LinkedIn and Twitter, or Instagram or Facebook, or WhatsApp or Line or Kakao Talk or Viber or the Telegram, or I can't believe how many different accounts I have out there. It's insane. But
thanks to entrepreneurs.
The simplest is email. My email is reichert@garage.com. And if you forget it, you can always find me at garage.com at our website, and I even have my email on the website. So we don't make it that hard, for people to find us. I'm happy to engage in any questions that people have, or comments, or retorts, or disagreements, or arguments, or anything. I'm happy to engage.
Great.
So thank you so much, Yingying, for giving me this opportunity. It's always a delight to spend time with you, even if we are 5,000 miles apart. And I do, wish you all of the very best in everything that's going on there. And I absolutely, absolutely hope that in the next few years, we will be coming more together than we will be growing apart.
It's a philosophical ending. I love it. Thank you.
Okay, that's our show for this week. Don't forget to visit howchinaworkspodcast.com to learn more about Ying or myself, our show, and to find links to all of our previous episodes. This is probably a especially wonderful time to catch up on podcasts if you have not done so previously. Ying and I are pretty surprised sometimes when we consider how many shows we've done, but we have been fortunate to have some really fantastic, insightful, thoughtful guests who have contributed a lot to the ongoing conversation that we have with you here on this show. So we hope that you'll go back and look through our archives and discover some of those gems hidden amongst all the other episodes that you could choose from. Thanks again for listening. On behalf of Yingying Li, I'm Brendan Davis, and we'll see you again soon on How China Works.